Whether you realize it or not, there's a law influencing your life every single day. It affects your opportunities, your income, even the people you attract. The surprising part is that most people live their entire lives without ever noticing it. Section 1. The architecture of compensation. Consider, for a moment, the concept of wealth. If you were to ask the average person on the street what money is or how it is acquired, you would likely receive a remarkably confused set of answers. Most people view money as an entity to be chased, a prize to be captured through sheer force of will, favorable circumstance, or perhaps the manipulation of luck. They spend their days anxiously looking for the harvest, completely forgetting the fundamental necessity of planting the seed. But money, in its truest essence, cannot be pursued directly. Like a shadow, it flees when it is chased. It is not a cause. It is an effect. It is the natural, inevitable result of a specific, deliberate action. To understand the nature of financial reward, we must first strip away the emotional baggage and the societal illusions that surround it. Money is, philosophically and practically, a measure of exchange. It is a symbol of usefulness. More precisely, it is a receipt, a certificate of performance handed to you by the world in exchange for a service rendered. The amount of money you receive from the world will always be in exact proportion to the demand for what you do, your ability to do it, and the difficulty of replacing you. This is an immutable law, as reliable and unforgiving as the law of gravity. Yet it is a law that the vast majority of humanity fails to recognize. They fixate on the effect, the money, and attempt to manipulate it while entirely ignoring the cause. What then is the cause? The cause is the intelligent, directed resolution of a problem. Money flows invariably and relentlessly to the problem solvers. It is drawn as if by a magnetic force to those who can look at the landscape of human endeavor, identify friction, and apply their minds to smooth it out. A problem in this context is not necessarily a crisis or a tragedy. It is simply a gap. It is the space between what currently is and what is ultimately desired. It is an unmet need, an inefficiency, a question waiting for an answer. Every product, every service, and every great industry on the face of the earth exists because someone, somewhere, identified a problem and decided to solve it. The farmer solves the problem of hunger. The architect solves the problem of shelter. The manufacturer solves the problem of scarcity by producing goods at scale. Even the entertainer solves a problem, the problem of human boredom or the need for emotional release. Wealth is nothing more than the accumulated byproduct of these solutions. Now let us examine how our thinking shapes our relationship with this profound principle. The average individual walks through life reacting to problems. When they encounter a difficulty, an inconvenience, or an obstacle, their immediate response is frustration. They complain. They view the problem as an intrusion upon their peace, a nuisance to be avoided, or a burden to be handed off to someone else. Because their mind is clouded by irritation and a sense of victimhood, they are entirely blind to the opportunity hidden within the friction. They demand to be compensated simply for existing, or for putting in a set number of hours, regardless of the value those hours produce. They operate under the illusion that the world owes them a living. The individual of disciplined thought, however, operates from a completely different vantage point. When they encounter a problem, they do not recoil. They observe. They understand that every problem is in reality a disguised invitation for compensation. They realize that the world is willing to gladly hand over its resources to anyone who can remove its pains, simplify its tasks, or elevate its experience. Therefore, the deliberate thinker trains their mind to seek out these gaps. They cultivate an intense, quiet awareness of the world around them. They listen not just to what people say, but to what they struggle with. This brings us to the profound cause and effect relationship that governs your personal economy. Your mind is the ultimate architect of your circumstances. If your thoughts are consumed primarily by a desire for money, if you are constantly worried about your own lack, your own needs, and your own desire for acquisition, you are operating in a state of taking. The universe does not reward the desire to take. It operates on the principle of equilibrium. It demands a fair exchange. To receive, you must first output value. When you shift your mental focus away from what you want and direct it entirely toward what you can provide, a remarkable transformation occurs. You move from being a consumer of circumstances to a creator of solutions. Think of it as a matter of optical focus. If you look through a camera lens and focus on the background, the subject in the foreground becomes blurred and indistinguishable. If you focus on the subject, the background fades into its proper supportive place. In the economic reality of life, the problem you are solving is the subject. The money is the background. When you focus your intellect, your creativity, and your energy entirely on solving a problem with excellence, the compensation naturally resolves itself. It follows you. It seeks you out. The marketplace is incredibly efficient at finding and rewarding those who make themselves genuinely useful. This philosophy places the responsibility for your financial well-being squarely on your own shoulders. It removes the comforting but paralyzing excuses of bad luck, of a disadvantaged background, or of an unfair system. If you are dissatisfied with your current level of compensation, the most constructive question you can ask yourself is not, "How can I make more money?" That question leads only to frustration and dead ends, because it addresses the effect rather than the cause. The proper question, the question that aligns with the laws of cause and effect, is, how can I become more useful? Or what problem can I solve today that I did not solve yesterday? The scale of your reward is inextricably linked to the scale of the problem you resolve. The barrier to entry is low, and the supply of individuals capable of performing the task is high. If, however, you apply your mind to a complex problem, if you study, if you prepare, if you develop a specialized skill set that allows you to unravel difficulties that baffle others, your compensation will expand proportionally. The world weighs your contribution on an exact and uncompromising scale. To master this principle requires a rigorous discipline of thought. It demands that you cease viewing your daily occupation merely as a place you go to collect a paycheck and begin viewing it as a laboratory for problem solving. It requires you to look at your environment and ask, how can this be done better? What friction can I remove? What value can I add that is not currently expected of me? This is not necessarily a matter of working longer hours or exhausting yourself in physical labor. Physical labor has its limits. Applied intelligence, however, is boundless. Wealth is not created by hands. It is created by thought. A problem is always solved in the mind before it is ever solved in the physical world. Nature herself operates entirely on this principle of cause and effect, of problem and solution. A farmer does not stand in a barren field and demand a harvest. He understands that the earth owes him nothing. He must first solve the problem of the uncultivated soil. He must plow, he must plant, and he must tend. Only after he has provided the service, only after he has initiated the cause, does the earth yield the effect, which is the crop. The harvest is the earth's compensation to the farmer for his intelligent labor. You are the farmer of your own potential. Your mind is the fertile soil, and the problems you choose to solve are the seeds you plant. If you plant nothing, you will harvest nothing, regardless of how intensely you may wish for a different outcome. The realization that money goes to problem solvers is profoundly liberating. It takes the mystery out of success. It replaces anxiety with a clear, actionable directive. You do not need to invent a new philosophy of wealth. You simply need to observe the world, identify a need, and dedicate your mind to filling it. As you begin to internalize this truth, you will start to see the world not as a landscape of scarcity, but as a vast, rich field of opportunity. Every complaint you hear, every inefficiency you experience, every obstacle you encounter will no longer be a source of irritation. Instead, it will ring like a bell, signaling an opportunity to serve, to solve, and consequently, to prosper. This is the foundation of all legitimate wealth. It begins with the quiet, resolute decision to stop chasing the shadow of money and to start building the architecture of value. Section 2, the crucible of the directed mind. Building this architecture of value requires a fundamental reorganization of your inner world. It is one thing to intellectually agree that money goes to problem solvers. It is quite another to forge this understanding into a daily operational habit of mind. The greatest barrier between you and the compensation you desire does not exist in the marketplace, nor does it exist in the actions of other people. It exists entirely within your own habitual patterns of thought. The human mind, left unguided, is an instrument that naturally seeks the path of least resistance. It craves comfort, routine, and the safety of the familiar. To solve a problem, especially a complex or deeply entrenched one, requires the deliberate expenditure of mental energy. It demands the disruption of routine and the willingness to step into the unknown. This is precisely why the vast majority of people instinctively retreat from difficulties when they experience the friction of a problem. Their unconditioned reflex is to seek an escape route, a distraction, or a convenient justification for why the problem cannot be solved. If they cannot escape it, they decide it is not their responsibility to address it. This mental inertia is the primary saboteur of human potential, and it is the root cause of financial stagnation. To become a master problem solver, you must first become the absolute master of your own attention. You must train yourself to stand firm in the face of friction. When a complication arises in your work or your environment, the undisciplined mind immediately asks, "Why is this happening to me?" This is a profoundly useless question. It is a question rooted in victimhood, and it yields nothing but self-pity and paralysis. The disciplined mind, operating under the law of cause and effect, asks an entirely different set of questions. What exactly is the nature of this difficulty? What are its component parts? What is the logical mechanism required to dismantle it? Notice the profound difference in trajectory. The first question points inward toward the ego and its desire for comfort. The second points outward toward objective reality and the formulation of a solution. This shift in perception is the vital first step. You must condition yourself to view every obstacle not as a personal affront, but as an intellectual puzzle waiting to be unlocked. However, observation and willingness alone are insufficient. You may clearly identify a profound need within your industry, your community, or your organization. You may possess the genuine desire to fill that gap. Yet, if you lack the capacity to address it, your observation remains entirely theoretical. The marketplace does not issue receipts for the mere identification of problems. It pays only for their execution and resolution. Therefore, the commitment to solving problems is, by absolute necessity, a commitment to perpetual self-improvement. To solve problems of increasing magnitude, you must continually sharpen the instrument of your own intellect. If you wish to invite greater compensation into your life, you must deliberately subject yourself to the rigors of study, practice, and refinement. You must acquire the specialized knowledge that transforms a daunting obstacle into a manageable task. This is the essence of becoming difficult to replace. The individual who relies solely on general knowledge, or who attempts to coast on the skills they acquired a decade ago, will inevitably find their compensation stagnating. They are attempting to unlock the doors of today's opportunities using yesterday's keys. The world moves forward, creating new complexities and new friction. Your capability must expand at an equal or greater rate if you are to remain a valuable cause in the economic equation. Here, we must address a common and tragic misunderstanding regarding the nature of work itself. Pervasive, almost romanticized belief that sheer exertion, the mere expenditure of sweat, time, and physical energy, automatically entitles one to financial reward. This is a severe misinterpretation of how the world operates. You can expend tremendous energy digging a massive trench in the middle of a barren desert, exhausting yourself from sunrise to sunset. But if that trench serves no purpose, if it solves no problem and fulfills no human need, your labor is economically worthless. The universe does not reward exhaustion. It rewards utility. Your effort, therefore, must be intelligently directed. It must be aimed with laser-like precision at a point of actual friction in the world. This requires a high degree of objective detachment. You must be willing to evaluate your own efforts, not by how difficult they feel to you, but by the tangible value they produce for others. It is a sobering but necessary exercise to look closely at your daily activities and ask yourself, is this truly solving a problem? Or am I merely rearranging the furniture of my own busyness? Am I generating motion? Or am I generating direction? This level of rigorous honesty brings us face to face with another formidable internal obstacle: the human ego. The ego is a terrible master in the realm of economics. It is obsessed with recognition, with status, and with immediate gratification. It whispers that you are already doing enough, that your current level of skill is sufficient, and that if the world does not recognize your genius, it is the world's fault. The ego demands the receipt before the service has been rendered. It insists on the harvest before the planting. To operate successfully within the immutable laws of compensation, you must subjugate the ego to the objective of service. True wealth creation is rooted in a profound, practical humility. It is the humility to recognize that your financial value is determined by the recipient of your service, not by your own inflated estimation of your worth. When you adopt this mindset, you cease arguing with the marketplace. You stop resenting those who have achieved greater financial success, recognizing instead that they have simply aligned themselves more effectively with the demands of problem resolution. You begin to study their methods rather than envy their results. You realize that the market is an impersonal judge, weighing only the scale and effectiveness of the solutions provided. Furthermore, the mental discipline required to solve meaningful problems involves mastering your relationship with failure. The process of moving from the identification of a problem to its ultimate resolution is rarely a straight, uninterrupted line. It is fraught with setbacks, miscalculations, and temporary defeats. The undisciplined mind interprets these setbacks as a signal to quit. They view a failed attempt as a personal indictment, a definitive proof of their own inadequacy. The directed mind understands that failure is simply data. It is unemotional feedback from the environment, indicating that the current approach is flawed and that a new variable must be introduced. When you are deeply committed to solving a problem, a failed attempt is not a defeat. It is the necessary elimination of a non-working path. It brings you one step closer to the correct configuration. This requires a formidable degree of mental endurance. It requires you to maintain your focus on the ultimate objective, even when the immediate circumstances are discouraging or chaotic. You must hold the image of the solved problem in your mind with such clarity and conviction that temporary obstacles lose their power to demoralize you. You must become fascinated by the friction itself, trusting that the application of sustained, intelligent thought will eventually break it down. This internal discipline, the ability to direct your attention away from yourself and toward the needs of others, to acquire the necessary competence, To subjugate the ego and to persist unemotionally through setbacks is the true crucible of success. It is within this quiet, invisible forge of the mind that your earning power is actually determined. The money you eventually receive in your hand is merely the delayed echo of the internal work you have already completed. You must become the person capable of solving the problem before the problem can be solved. And you must solve the problem before the compensation can flow. The order is absolute, and it cannot be bypassed. The cause must always, without exception, precede the effect. Section 3. The silent architecture of prosperity. When you fully internalize this absolute order, that the cause must always precede the effect, that the solution must precede the compensation, you cross a profound psychological threshold. You move from a state of dependency to a state of complete and unshakable sovereignty. The realization that the universe operates on strict, impersonal laws of exchange is not a limitation. It is the ultimate liberation. It means that your financial destiny is not governed by the whims of chance, the favoritism of others, or the unpredictable fluctuations of luck. It is governed entirely by a mechanism that rests squarely within your own control. Your ability and your willingness to identify, confront, and resolve the frictions that exist in the world around you. Most individuals live their entire lives in the realm of effects. They view their financial circumstances as if they were unpredictable weather patterns, hoping for a sunny day and taking shelter when the storms arrive, believing they have no influence over the climate of their own life. They look at their income, their debts, and their lack of resources, and they feel a deep sense of anxiety and powerlessness. But the master problem solver understands that the environment is merely a mirror. Your current financial compensation is nothing more than an unemotional reflection of the exact level of utility you are currently providing to your fellow man. If a man stands before a mirror and finds his appearance unkempt, he does not shout at the glass. He does not strike the mirror, nor does he petition the mirror to change its reflection. He understands that to alter the image, he must alter himself. The economic mirror operates with the exact same flawless logic. If you are dissatisfied with the compensation flowing into your life, you must not argue with the marketplace. You must not harbor resentment toward the economy, your industry, or your employer. You must turn your attention inward and ask, how can I increase my utility? How can I refine my skills so that I may solve more complex problems? How can I expand my capacity to serve? When you ask these questions with genuine sincerity, you begin to construct the silent architecture of your own prosperity. You realize that to multiply your returns, you must multiply your service. This expansion of service is generally achieved through two primary avenues: increasing the magnitude of the problem you solve, or increasing the scale of the people for whom you solve it. The magnitude of a problem is determined by its complexity and its impact. There are common, everyday problems that require very little specialized thought to resolve. Because these problems are easily solved by almost anyone, the compensation for solving them is minimal. The barrier to entry is low, and the supply of available problem solvers is vast. However, as you move up the scale of complexity, the air becomes thinner. The problems become more deeply entrenched, requiring a synthesis of specialized knowledge, sustained focus, and creative reasoning. Because fewer individuals possess the discipline to acquire this level of competence, the friction remains high. When you condition your mind to step into this space, to tackle the issues from which others retreat, you dramatically increase your value. You become a rare and vital asset. Alternatively, you may choose to solve a relatively simple problem, but you solve it for a massive number of people. You find a point of friction that is universally experienced, and you engineer a solution that can be distributed far and wide. Whether you are solving a $1 million problem for a single enterprise or a $1 problem for 1 million individuals, The law remains mathematically consistent. The compensation will always adjust itself to equal the scope and the scale of the utility provided. Understanding this mathematical equilibrium frees you from one of the most destructive illusions of the human mind, the illusion of competition. The undisciplined mind views the marketplace as a battlefield. It operates from a paradigm of scarcity, believing that wealth is a finite pie and that for one person to gain, another must inevitably lose. This competitive mindset breeds envy, hostility, and a frantic, fear-based approach to work. It forces you to constantly look sideways at your peers, measuring your progress against theirs, and attempting to outmaneuver them for a limited pool of resources. But when you elevate your perspective and fix your attention entirely on the resolution of problems, you leave the competitive plane and enter the creative plane. You recognize that wealth is not a fixed quantity to be divided and hoarded. It is an infinite resource that is continually generated through human ingenuity. There is no shortage of problems in the world. The world is teeming with inefficiencies, unmet needs, and complex challenges waiting to be untangled. Because there is an infinite supply of problems, there is an infinite supply of wealth waiting to be created by those willing to solve them. You do not need to compete with anyone. You only need to create, to innovate, and to serve. When your focus is locked on the objective of providing exceptional value, the competition becomes entirely irrelevant. You are no longer fighting for a piece of the existing pie. You are baking an entirely new one. As you operate on this creative plane, you must also master your understanding of time. There is a natural, unavoidable lag between the execution of a solution and the arrival of the compensation. This space between the cause and the effect is the ultimate testing ground of human character. It is the void where faith and discipline are forged. Consider the immutable laws of agriculture. A farmer does not plant a seed in the earth and then stand over it, demanding a harvest by nightfall. He does not dig up the soil the following morning to check if the roots have taken hold. He understands that growth requires time, that the seed must undergo a silent, invisible process of transformation before it breaks the surface. He does his work, he prepares the soil, he plants the seed, he provides the water, and then he trusts the law. He knows that if the cause has been properly established, the effect is guaranteed. The laws of economics demand the exact same patience and the exact same trust. You must dedicate yourself to the daily unglamorous work of solving problems, refining your skills, and delivering immense value even when the immediate financial reward is not yet visible. The undisciplined mind panics in this void. When the reward does not arrive instantly, they assume the law is broken. They abandon their efforts, change their course, or revert to the comfort of their old routines, effectively digging up the seed before it has had the chance to germinate. The directed mind, however, remains steadfast. You must understand that every problem you solve, every friction you eliminate, and every improvement you make is a seed planted in the fertile soil of the marketplace. The compensation may not arrive today, and it may not arrive tomorrow, but it is moving toward you with the inevitability of a mathematical equation. The universe keeps a perfect ledger. No genuine act of service, no intelligent resolution of a problem is ever lost. It is simply accumulating interest, waiting for the precise moment of maturity to yield its harvest. Therefore, you must guard against the temptation of premature extraction. Do not become so fixated on the money that you lose sight of the mechanism that produces it. Money is not a substance. It is a shadow. It is the shadow cast by the substance of your usefulness. To spend your life chasing money is a fool's errand. It is like a man trying to catch a shadow by running after it. The faster he runs, the faster the shadow eludes him. But when the man stops, turns his back to the shadow, and walks deliberately toward the light, the shadow naturally and effortlessly follows him. The light in this context is your capacity to serve. It is your dedication to becoming an instrument of immense utility in a world that desperately needs solutions. When you turn your attention entirely toward this light, when you wake up each morning and ask, "Where is the friction today? How can I apply my mind to smooth the path for others? How can I leave my environment more ordered, more efficient, and more harmonious than I found it?" The shadow of financial reward will follow you wherever you go. You will not have to force it, and you will not have to manipulate it. It will be drawn to you by the sheer gravitational pull of your own value. This is the final equation of prosperity. It is a philosophy of supreme personal responsibility and quiet, unwavering confidence. Your life is your own enterprise, and you are its sole architect. The difficulties you encounter are not burdens. They are the very raw materials from which your wealth will be constructed. Embrace the friction. Cultivate the discipline to observe, the intellect to analyze, and the persistence to resolve. Make yourself deeply, undeniably useful. When you master the art of solving problems, you align yourself with the deepest currents of human progress, and you secure for yourself a life of enduring abundance, purpose, and profound peace of mind.